So welcome to our 6th RC passage together. So let's go ahead and start, and as usual, you will go through the passage and the questions, and thereafter you will join me for a discussion of the passage and then subsequently the questions. In case you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so that you get to know whenever I upload a video. Okay, so let's start. So pause the video. Read these two paragraphs, and then I'll take you to the next slide where once again you can pause, read, and then I'll keep instructing you minimally during this process. Okay, so pause and read. Okay, next. 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 And last. Okay, now that you've gone through the passage, let's jump into the questions. So pause and answer this, and then we will move on. Okay, next. So pause, answer. Next. Okay, hope you've answered this. So here is the next question. And you know that we mostly stop at 4, but in this case the passage had 5 questions. So here is the 5th and the last one. There you go. So I hope that you've gone through the passage, attempted all the questions. So let's start reading it all together. The only thing worse than being lied to is not knowing you are being lied to. So when somebody lies to you, you feel bad about it. Now the author says there is this one thing which is worse than that, and that is you were lied to, but you were not even aware of it. So somebody managed to fool you successfully. Nice line to start with. It is true that plastic pollution is a huge problem of planetary proportions. And it is true we could all do more to reduce our plastic footprint. Okay, so there are these two facts that are labeled true by the author. So one is plastic pollution is a huge problem, and the second is we can do more to reduce our plastic footprint, which basically means reduce our use of plastic. Okay, the lie is that that blame for the plastic problem is wasteful consumers, and that changing our individual habits will fix it. Saying yes, plastic is a problem and we can do more, but then the lie is that the blame rests with the consumer, and that if we change, as consumers change our habits, the plastic problem will be fixed. Then the next, recycling plastic is to saving the earth what hammering a nail is to halting a falling skyscraper. So this right here is an analogy. So what are the two things which are being compared? So recycling plastic is to saving the earth. This relationship is similar to the relationship where you are hammering a nail to halt a falling skyscraper. So if a skyscraper, a really tall multi-story building is falling, do you think putting a nail in that structure somewhere will help you save that skyscraper? Will it prevent the fall? No. Similarly, if the analogy were to hold true, similarly, recycling plastic will not help you in saving the earth. So it's just an extension of the last sentence of the previous paragraph. We're saying individual habits are not going to help you with the plastic problem. So, and then this is now an extension of this analogy. You struggle to find a place to do it. Place to do what? Hammer a nail and feel pleased when you succeed, but your effort is wholly inadequate and distracts from the real problem of why the building is collapsing in the first place. So just an extension, just an elaboration of that analogy. The real problem is that single-use plastic, the very idea of producing plastic items like grocery bags, which we use for an average of 12 minutes, but can persist in the environment for half a millennium. Imagine. So the real problem is that single-use plastic is an incredibly reckless abuse of technology. When you behave in a reckless manner, you are oblivious to the dangers that the particular activity poses. So you've seen a lot of reckless drivers on the streets, right? So reckless abuse of technology. Encouraging individuals to recycle more will never solve the problem of a massive production of single-use plastic that should have been avoided in the first place. Okay. Then the next one. As an ecologist and evolutionary biologist, I've had a disturbing window into the accumulating literature on the hazards of plastic pollution. Great. So this is, for some reasons, he knows the plastic pollution well. Scientists have long recognized that plastics biodegrade slowly. Now, whenever anything biodegrades, what do we really mean by that? So if something is biodegradable, it means that it is decomposed by bacteria or other living organisms. So here, when you say that plastic biodegrades slowly, it means that the bacteria or other living organisms are able to biodegrade plastic, but the process is very slow. They're able to decompose it, but the process is very slow. And then the moment you look at this, if at all, that changes the interpretation. So maybe they'll not even be able to do it. And even if they were to do it, the process is going to be slow and pose multiple threats to wildlife through entanglement and consumption. So two things actually. They biodegrade slowly and they pose multiple threats to wildlife through entanglement and consumption. So entanglement in this sense will be that the organisms in the wild, they can at times be wrapped around in plastic, or they can get twisted into plastics. So once in a while we keep hearing this news item about some fish, some turtle in the sea which got entangled. Somehow the plastic waste ended up surrounding them, right? So, and consumption, where they end up, where some animal in the wild end up eating the plastic, and that causes a problem. More recent reports highlight dangers posed by absorption of toxic chemicals in the water and by plastic odors that mimic some species' natural food. So because it mimics their natural food, what will happen? They'd go ahead and eat it. Plastics also accumulate up the food chain. So what this basically means is that, let us say a small fish ate something that had plastic in it. Now, the fish will not be able to digest it, but in that process, that fish got eaten by, not in that process, but then later on, that fish got eaten by a bigger fish, which in turn got eaten by an even bigger fish. So that bit of plastic remains in them. It keeps on getting accumulated. And eventually, when humans eat it, we end up ingesting that in our seafood. Okay. Then next, beginning in the 1950s, big beverage companies like Coca-Cola and Anheuser-Busch, along with Philip Morris and others, formed a non-profit called Keep America Beautiful. Its mission is was to educate and encourage environmental stewardship in the public. So stewardship in this context would mean to care or manage. Okay, a single word can have multiple meanings. I'm just restricting myself to the one which is relevant here. So their goal was to educate and encourage how to manage and care for the environment. And they wanted to teach it to public. At face value, these efforts seem benevolent. Benevolent is these efforts were kind, good-hearted, but they obscure the real problem, which is the role that corporate polluters play in the plastic problem. So, at face value would mean that at first glance you would think that their efforts that are being conducted through such non-profits are good. But these efforts actually end up hiding the role that these corporates play in creating pollution, creating plastic pollution in the first place. So this clever misdirection. So the author is saying that these organizations starting this non-profit is a misdirection. What is a misdirection? You've seen magicians. They at times distract you. They ask you to focus on a particular place so that you are not able to focus on that other place where they are going to do something. So similarly for corporates, misdirection will be they make you pay attention to the wrong thing, usually intentionally, so that you will not notice something else. So in this case, they are focusing on what people should do in order to keep your attention away from the fact that the corporates are actually the ones that are responsible. So this clever misdirection has led journalist and author Heather Rogers to describe Keep America Beautiful as the first corporate greenwashing front. So what exactly is greenwashing? Behaviors or activities that would make people believe that the organization is doing more to protect the environment than it really is doing. So they think that it's the greenwashing front, which basically means that this non-profit's purpose is to show people that they're doing more to protect the environment than they actually are. So as it has helped shift, so he's calling it a misdirection, a greenwashing front, because it has helped shift the public focus to consumer recycling behavior and actively thwarted legislation that would increase extended producer responsibility for waste management. So they blocked the laws that could have increased the responsibility of the producers of those single-use plastics. Okay, and this extended responsibility. Okay, so for a longish period of time, the greatest success of Keep America Beautiful has been to shift the onus of environmental responsibility onto the public, while simultaneously becoming a trusted name in the environmental movement. So they've ended up establishing themselves as good, and they've also managed to successfully shift the responsibility of environment onto the public. And then the last paragraph. So what can we do to make responsible use of plastic a reality? So here are the solutions that are being offered. First, reject the lie. Litterbugs are not responsible for the global ecological disaster of plastic. So litterbugs are people who discard their waste products randomly, basically consumers. Saying consumers are not responsible for this disaster. Humans can only function to the best of their abilities given time, mental bandwidth and systemic constraints. So systemic constraints are system-wide constraints. So anything which is systemic, so let's say a systemic problem, then it means that it is a basic problem which is experienced by the whole of a country or the whole of a particular group and not just a part of it. So we have these issues. Our huge problem with plastic is the result of a permissive legal framework that has allowed the uncontrolled rise of plastic pollution, despite clear evidence of the harm it causes to local communities and the world's oceans. Recycling is also too hard in most parts of the US and lacks the proper incentives to make it work well. So basically, now that we've read it, you need to have an overview of the passage in your mind. So the first paragraph was about, we are told a lie that consumer behavior can fix plastic problem. Then the next paragraph merely extended it, that consumer behavior is not going to change anything. Then the next paragraph basically went ahead and talked about the problem with plastic. Keep America Beautiful is a sham, and what really needs to be done. This is basically a throwback to the first paragraph. Make corporates responsible, and it's the legislation which needs to now act more decisively. So when you have this overview in your mind, it becomes very easy for us to answer questions. So here is the first one. Okay, so question 1, which of the following interventions would the author most strongly support? Now the moment you look at this question stem, you're basically looking for something that can be inferred on the basis of the passage. Okay, so treat these as inference-based questions. In every inference-based question, we go to the options and we start applying this label of true, false and can't say. So let's start with A. Recycling all plastic debris in the seabed. Is the author favoring recycling? The author says that recycling is not going to fix things, right? And therefore, will the author support it? We'll either call it can't say or we'd call it false, right? It is definitely not going to be true. We'll get into the distinction if the options require it. Otherwise, we don't really need to spend much time on it. B, having all consumers change their plastic consumption habits? False. The author believes this is not a solution. Completely banning all single-use plastic bags? Can't say. So the author is definitely critical of single-use plastic bags. He's saying that they should not have been produced in that quantity, in that number. And because it says in that quantity, in that number, to say completely banning, that is not really going to be supported by the information that is provided in the passage. Okay, D, passing regulations targeted at producers that generate plastic products? True. This is something that has been mentioned in the last paragraph and even earlier in the passage. So, out of the 4, D is the only one which is unambiguously true, and that is why our answer to question 1 must be option D. And you notice how the exam can make it a little tricky. So, whenever you come across options that are generalizations, that are extreme because they use words like all, words like completely, be extra cautious. I'm telling you, 99% of the cases, that conclusion or that answer choice is not going to be true in an inference-based question. Okay, so be extra cautious of these things. Here is the next one then. The author lists all of the following as negative effects of the use of plastics except. So this is what we call a fact-based or specific detail question. There's also a question type that most of you find easy in terms of arriving at the right answer. The only challenge here can be the challenge of speed. Because here are 4 options. You need to refer to the relevant part of the passage to pick up whether something is mentioned or not. So it can be time consuming but otherwise not difficult, and even there, if you've managed to create a successful overview of the passage, chances are that it won't even take you that long. So the moment I look at negative effects of the use of plastics, I recall that these things were given to us in the 3rd paragraph. A bit of it was probably also, no, not in the 2nd, but 3rd paragraph is the primary one. So if I go back to the 3rd paragraph, I notice that we are talking about they biodegrade slowly, if at all. So that's mentioned. We are looking for the one which is not mentioned. Except is more or less an odd one out. Okay. So all of the following except. So basically the one which is mentioned gets ruled out. So air pollution caused during the process of recycling plastics, not, I haven't seen it anywhere, but poisonous chemicals released into the water and food we consume. Yep. Combine these 2 things and you'd have B. Okay, you'd have C, sorry. So this gets ruled out. D, adverse impacts on the digestive systems of animals exposed to plastic. So yes, even this is mentioned. So even this gets ruled out. So B is not mentioned anywhere, and therefore in this particular question our answer must be option B. Let's get into our next. So in the first paragraph, the author uses lie to refer to the. So here is the first paragraph where he's saying the lie is this. So if I were to treat it as math, I'd say that the correct answer is the one which comes closest to this. Blame for the plastic problem is wasteful consumers, and that changing our individual habits will fix it. So which one comes really close to it? Blame assigned to consumers for indiscriminate use of plastics. Yes, that's quite close. Understatement of the enormity of the plastics pollution problem. That's not at all close. Fact that people do not know they have been lied to. Not at all close. What is the lie? The lie was that last sentence, right? Understatement of the effects of recycling plastics. Not at all close. So the moment you get that idea in your mind, right, that hey, this is something that is mentioned as a lie and I'm looking for an option that comes close to it, you'd find it very easy to eliminate B, C and D and choose A as your answer. Let's go ahead and get into our next question. Question number 4. In the second paragraph, the phrase what hammering a nail is to halting a falling skyscraper means. So it is an analogy, right? So it's a relationship between these 2 things that is designed to illustrate the relationship between recycling plastics is to saving the earth. So as long as you have this analogy in mind and the elaboration in the next sentence, I think we are good to go. We are once again looking for an option that comes the closest to the idea mentioned in first, second and third sentence of this particular, the second paragraph. So which one? Recycling, why am I reading it? Relying on emerging technologies to mitigate the ill effects of plastic pollution. Was this even mentioned in that context? It was mentioned elsewhere, but it has got nothing to do with this analogy. So that's a misdirection on the part of the examiner, isn't it? So let's rule this out. Encouraging the responsible production of plastics by firms. focusing on consumer behavior to tackle the problem of plastics pollution. Recycling is to saving the earth. So recycling, who recycles? The consumer. So yep, this can be our answer. D, focusing on single-use plastic bags to reduce the plastic footprint. No, not a part of that analogy. So the best answer for us is option C. And here is the next one. It can be inferred that the author considers the Keep America Beautiful organization. So what? So here is it. Here it is. So if I look at it, I notice quite a few expressions. So at face value, they obscure the real problem. It's a misdirection on the part of the corporates. It's a greenwashing front. So on the whole, can I look at all these things and say that the author, when it comes to Keep America Beautiful organization, the author's overall attitude is what? Negative towards this organization. So let's see. A greenwash because it was a benevolent attempt to improve public recycling habits. Now this greenwash bit is negative, but look at the next part. Because it was a benevolent attempt to improve public recycling habits. Is it a greenwash because of this, or is it a greenwash because they are trying to shrug off their own responsibility? So, therefore, I think a part of it, this part after because is not right, so we can eliminate A. A sham as it diverted attention away from the role of corporates in plastic pollution. Can be true. An important step in sensitizing producers to the need to tackle plastic pollution. This is positive, right? We know that the author is negative, so this goes away. D, an innovative example of a collaborative corporate social responsibility initiative. Another one which is positive. When we know the author is negative, we don't even need to read further, we can eliminate it. So the choice was basically between A and B, where B is better. So let's go ahead and mark that as our answer. So that's the passage, and here is something that I want to leave you with. I cannot express how important it is to believe that taking one tiny and possibly very uncomfortable step at a time can ultimately add up to a great distance. So keep showing up for work every day, and I'm sure you will go ahead and end up creating something absolutely magnificent. So that's it from me today. Don't forget to like the video before you go, and yes, subscribe, bell icon. That's it from me. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay safe, stay focused, stay in touch. I'll see you soon.